Businesses flying the rainbow gay pride flag barely warrant a second look these days in South St. Louis's Grove neighborhood. The flag is nearly everywhere, on homes, even painted into crosswalks. But there was a time when that was hardly the case.
There has been immense change.
Steve Brawley runs the St. Louis LGBT History Project. He points to all the national discussion of this week's 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots in New York City, a major part of the origin story for the national gay rights movement. He says here in St. Louis, in that same year, 1969, we had our own first pushback by the gay community.
St. Louis had its own Stonewall in 1969, which some people don't know about, in which 9 local men who were dressed up in drag for Halloween were arrested for violating what was then a masquerading ordinance. It was illegal in St. Louis from 1840 to 1985 to dress as a member of the opposite sex. That night in Halloween of '69, 9 men walked out of a bar in drag in the Grand Center area and were arrested. And there was a new group in town, St. Louis's first gay rights group called the Mandrake Society. They heard about the arrest. They went down, helped bail the guys out, and the case was eventually thrown out. But it sort of started St. Louis's modern gay LGBTQIA rights efforts.
That effort in St. Louis, like in so many communities, has forged gradual change over the years. Groups quietly and discreetly gathering in the 1950s were public clubs by the 70s, and then in 1980, St. Louis's first official Pride event took place. Brawley has the t-shirt to prove it, but even by the 80s, attending Pride was not always a comfortable undertaking.
I can remember people still at that time being somewhat nervous, people maybe not wanting to be photographed, even at that time. And so now you have the main Pride. There are several Prides in St. Louis, but PrideFest, which goes down Market Street now. I've had several elders come up to me and actually cry to me and hug me and say, at the first Pride in 1980, we were still in the shadows. People wearing masks. People had their faces painted. They didn't want to be. They were afraid to be outed. Their employer seeing it or their family. And now we're walking down St. Louis's Main Street. I would never believe we could be doing this. It was not an option for us in 1980, and it's just hard to believe this is happening.
He says those are feelings that are somewhat foreign to people in today's LGBTQ community.
It is easier, and there is some frustration, especially with the elder community. It's like, hey, you kids don't know how lucky you have it nowadays. It's different, and you have some opportunities that we didn't have. It is easier, but that's one of the reasons that I founded the History Project, was so that younger folks could understand from where things have come and that people are standing on each other's shoulders.
All that has led to not one Pride event, but several in the area, something he thinks may make St. Louis a little bit unique.
I'm trying to kind of lay the groundwork that St. Louis may have one of the most diverse and maybe one of the largest Pride communities in America. I haven't figured this out yet, but I think we're onto something. There's a lot happening here.